Howdy, Immortalium here, and today I'm going to be discussing Between the Sheets by Erica Sakurazawa. Now, if you haven't heard of Erica Sakurazawa, she is a mangaka who specializes in josei manga, that is, manga aimed at adult women. And I've spoken before about my admiration for josei manga. I think that josei manga has some of the very best stories on offer from the manga medium, which is why I'm so disappointed at its lack of representation, both in Western releases and also in Japan itself. But how does Between the Sheets stack up to many of these other josei titles? And that's what I'm going to be discussing today. So let's get started. So what is the story of Between the Sheets? Between the Sheets follows two characters. A girl called Minako, also quite often referred to simply as Mina, and a girl called Saki. And these two girls like to hang out at bars. And whenever an ugly guy comes up, their routine is to pretend that they're a couple and make out with each other in order to send the guy off on his merry way. Mina starts to realize that she's developing feelings for Saki. Now, at the same time, Saki has a boyfriend called Ken. And Ken decides one time to sleep with Mina, which does happen. And afterwards, Saki rings Mina and says that she thinks that Ken is seeing another woman. And Mina, of course, is very concerned. She's like, oh my god, is this because of that one night? And it turns out that Ken was actually seeing another woman, which hurts both Mina and Saki. They go to a bar, and Saki decides to go on the rebound. She spots a cute guy and is interested in checking him out. And Mina decides to intervene, and she makes the first move in order to prevent Saki from going out with this guy. That's how the story begins. So the story is quite strange. It's dealing with unreciprocated love, and her method for keeping Saki to herself is to prevent any of these other guys from going out with Saki. There is a mention in this manga by Mina of the fact that she hates the way that Saki acts around guys. She likes Saki best when Saki is with Mina. On one hand, I kind of get Mina's motivation here, keeping Saki to herself. Even if Saki doesn't reciprocate the love, at least she still has that person with her. But on the other hand, it is a very strange story, and it's very hard to actually like the characters. Saki herself, I find quite annoying as a character. And unlikable, and I struggle to see how Mina likes Saki at all. Mina herself, while I do feel quite sympathetic for her, I do disagree with her methods. Obviously it leads to destruction. It's a very destructive method, and over the course of the story we see how that destruction affects their relationship. So this certainly isn't the manga that you want to read to feel happy. This is a manga that's exploring a danger when it comes to unreciprocated love. And while it's a very interesting manga to read overall, I do think the story, and in particular the characters, pales compared to many of the best that josei manga has to offer. Now, with regards to the artwork is actually quite reminiscent of another manga called Kyoko Okazaki, who has written some great manga titles such as Pink and Helter Skelter. And while I think that the artwork here isn't quite as well executed as Kyoko Okazaki's, I still do quite like this art style, this very stylized, scratchy look. I think it's a very appealing looking manga. Now, of course, a lot of people will probably not like this particular art style. It is a very different art style to many other manga titles. Less cartoony, more stylized. But even so, I do have to say that the artwork in this manga is a high point for me. This manga was released by Tokyo Pop, and while the release of it by today's standards isn't of particular note, there is a couple of points that I do want to highlight about this. This manga was released by Tokyo Pop in 2003 and was amongst a new push that they did called 100% Authentic Manga, which was to release manga in its original format, as in not to flip the artwork and have it read from left to right, to maintain the original right to left presentation of manga. And because of that, I do have to commend them for doing this push, which eventually convinced a lot of other companies to release manga in its original right-to-left format. This was amongst that first push. Now, I also have to commend them for releasing josei manga at that point. While it's much easier to find josei manga these days in the West, back then josei manga was a very hard sell. And I do have to commend Tokyopop. They made a lot of very bad decisions when it came to releasing manga, but their decision to release josei manga at that point is something that I have to commend them for. So even though by today's standards the release isn't particularly noteworthy, there aren't any extras, the paper quality is your standard tankobon stock, and it's just simply a right-to-left presentation, I do have to commend Tokyopop's release for the time period. Overall, what are my thoughts on Between the Sheets? It's a very interesting read, and I do quite like the art style of it, and I do quite like the idea of tackling a love that is unreciprocated. But I do struggle with the fact that the characters are so unlikable. In particular, Mina's methods to keeping Saki to herself, as in keeping these guys away from her and being with these guys herself. While I do think that this is a very interesting manga to read, and I'm very pleased to have read it and to have it in my collection, I do think that this pales compared to many of the stories that josei manga has to offer. And so I think that it's simply an alright read. If you're interested in josei manga, it is worth reading, but I think to many other people there are much better josei manga to get started with. So overall, I think Between the Sheets is simply an okay read. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye-bye.